Welcome back to CPL Radio. I'm Jeff Messerman in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, and we are a library that has a radio station, which is kind of a conversation piece unto itself. And I am joined today by Colonel Kevin Benson, who the reason that he's here, of course, is that he wrote a book, and I'm holding it in my hand right here. It is called Expectation of Valor. Let's get the glare out of there. Planning for the Iraq War. And he'll be in our community room on November 9th, and you can come in and he'll give a talk about presumably the events in the book, and you can probably ask him questions too. And I would like to say, Kevin, welcome.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. I really do.
So glad you can join me today. So as I said before we went on the air here, I spent the evening with your book, and having lived through that time period, it brought a lot of memories back. And I guess the first thing I would like to ask you is what's the impetus for writing this book, and what made you decide that now was the time?
Well, honestly, I'd started to write this shortly after I retired from active duty in 2007. And I was, batting O for everything in terms of finding a publisher. And I put it aside for a while. I went back to Iraq in 2010 to assist in planning on how to leave the first time.
Sure.
And when I came back, I was invited to go to an event at the U.S. Institute of Peace. And while I was there, a serving four-star general made the comment in his main address that in 2002, 2003, ill-informed planners put commanders in positions where they only had bad choices. And I was, to put it mildly, I was rather angry at that statement because that general should have known better, since I'd worked with him too. And so I came home, I pulled the manuscript out of the electronic dust bin where it was being held.
Sure.
And I updated it, rewrote it a few times, and went back into the publication process. But that was essentially it. He just upset me that this general in 2011 was continuing the trope that the Army and its planners did not think beyond the invasion and didn't figure out what to do after we got to Baghdad. And that's incorrect. So that was my motivation.
Certainly. And it's interesting, having spent some time with the book, these are essentially journal entries. So, which, you do something in this book that is not always terribly popular, especially with material like this. You tell the truth.
Well, I tell the truth, at least as I saw
it. As you saw, certainly. Which can carry with it some other people have different viewpoints. And in fact, it's funny that during that time period, as you well know, as a civilian, as this was going on, some civilians had questions, and occasionally those questions were met with open hostility. So you just sort of kept them to yourself. And I that was something that really came rushing back to me at that time. Like, what is, and some of those questions, right? And as a civilian, my experience you bring, and as a reader, you bring your experience to any book you bring. So it was really interesting that, and I'm wondering, I guess the question on top of that is, have you received any blowback for what you've done thus far?
Actually, no.
Wonderful.
I've gotten some very nice reviews, formal reviews, and some very nice comments from friends of mine who've read the book.
Sure.
Of course, not getting any blowback might also be indicative of the fact that not many people read books anymore. So,
well, we're working on that here at the library. We do what we
can. Indeed.
It has a real fly on the wall quality that I just love. I love books like this. So I can't wait. I'm going to spend the rest of my weekend with it, more than likely, and finish it up. You were really generous too, because you started off with a wonderful glossary for people like us, a civilian who is, letter salad seems to be the modus operandi for what you do. So
that's truth. We have a tendency to lapse into acronym speak or
Indeed.
mill speak. And that's why the editor and I decided to put the glossary up front as opposed to in the back of the book.
Yes, definitely appreciated. Although it's funny, I read a lot of science fiction, so it's like you wind up, if you're reading Dune, you have an entire glossary, and so and the crossovers for that are really interesting. Although, of course, the two genres couldn't be further apart, which you're doing in science fiction. Although it might feel like science fiction, and some of the stuff you write about is a little shocking, I will say. I mean, is it safe to say that coming from the area, and this is what I was gleaning right away, is accountability in short supply in the area you were dealing with there, or is that something that just happens? Do you have to just let history do that over time? I mean, that's because you mentioned the general who really, ticked you off, and a lot of that's based on, like I say, whether it's the political winds of the day or, just an opinion. So how does accountability fit into all that?
I personally think accountability is in the hands of future historians.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah.
It's easy to say, I'll say it. I think I acknowledge it, that I personally made errors in the planning effort. There are some things that we looked at and not discounted, but rated lower in terms of what we felt our enemy might do.
Sure.
But as far as long-term accountability and was this a good idea or was it not? Did it accomplish what we set out? Sadly, I think that's in the hands of someone 20, 30 years from now who can go back and try to put things into context.
Certainly. And that's what's wonderful about your book, is that while it won't give you all the answers you seek for that accountability or that long view perspective, it's certainly a key piece of that puzzle. And that's great. I mean, it's wonderful that you did that. It's an era that we don't talk about it enough, I don't think.
I agree. And that's another reason why I wanted to write. It was my first experience, go figure. I've been in the Army for a long time, and I just never had the opportunity to go to any of the wars that we'd fought until I was a senior officer.
Yeah.
So what I was relying on was my education and my, experiences up to that time.
Yeah.
And as I try to say in the book, that's where I realized that, boy, the German philosopher of war, von Clausewitz, said that war is an extension of policy through other means. By God, he's correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's, was true in the 18th and 19th centuries, and it's still true today.
Isn't that interesting that the hardware has changed, the technology has changed, but the core is exactly the same.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad you brought up policy, because it's the policy makers who, and they certainly play a role in your book and played a role in that time period. It's interesting, and you're not going after anybody in your book, which is great. I mean, you're just telling it from your perspective, but it is interesting that the policymakers and then the reality on the ground are just, there seems to be a gulf there. And does that gulf still exist? Are we shoring that up? What do we do?
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
One of my instructors, my professors, a long time ago, told me in a letter that expect that what can be controlled from Washington will be controlled from Washington. And that's the nature of today. I think it's always been true.
Yeah.
It's just that with social media, with the immediacy of contact, policymakers think they can take decisions and have something happen instantly. And it's still, that's not true, because there's still time zone differences.
Oh, sure.
And I told my boss once that, boss, the only decision you can take that would happen right now would be if you said, Benson, you're fired. and he laughed and said, "Don't tempt me." But even in theater, there's always a time lag between when a decision is taken and when action happens.
Sure.
And that was eminently true in my experience. Just sitting in all those video teleconferences.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Well, that and it's a weighty subject matter, and I'm sure you'll get into that a little more at length at your book talk. I do want to talk because the thing we are most concerned about here in a library setting is a book itself and how it comes to fruition. And what was the publishing process for you like? And are we talking query letters? Did you have an agent? I mean, all the stuff that we hear about.
No, this was a truly an adventure for myself. I don't have an agent. I finished a manuscript, and I just went to publishing companies' websites, looked to see what it was they expected.
Sure.
And in general, it's a cover letter that describes the audience, and then a bio of myself,
sure,
an annotated table of contents explaining all the chapters, and then an example chapter. And you put all that together and send it to a number of publishers. And I did it one at a time, like you're supposed to. Don't put it out to multiple sources. And from about 2009 until 2023, I kept on getting rejections until the wonderful people at Casemate Publishing in the UK wrote me a note back saying, "You mentioned you had a manuscript. Could you send us the entire manuscript?" "Why, yes, I can." And I sent that, and 3 weeks later, I got a note saying, "Boy, we're really interested, and we'd like to offer you a contract."
That's wonderful. Wow. I mean,
So, but it's persistence. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept all of the rejections. Just to tell a funny story, one of my favorite rejections, and I can't remember the publisher, otherwise I'd say it, but that might not be kosher. But the rejection I got was essentially somewhat interesting story, not enough violence, no sex.
Oh no!
Like, well, my wife was pretty happy about that.
Right. I don't think we want to go there.
So that was the range of some of the rejection notes that I got.
If you could punch this up a little bit, that'd be great.
Well,
oh my goodness. Yeah. It's a jungle out there, publishing world. But
it's just it was a remarkable adventure, and the adventure continues because marketing the book is really on me. The wonderful folks at Casemate are supporting me in terms of submitting the book to various foundations that offer prizes for new works of history. But setting up a visit to the Cedarburg Public Library, that was on me and my wonderful sister. And other places I've gone was all on me doing cold calls.
Well, we like having members of the Benson family because here on our airways, Victoria is of course wonderful with her League of Women Voters activities as well. So
indeed,
actually, it's all wonderful. So cool. I have to ask this, of course, as a final question: are you working on anything else? A follow up? Any other key? The finger's still on the keys, as they say.
Well, my fingertips are still on the keypad. I've been asked to write chapters for other folks' books. Anthologies, and as you might expect, since I'm a former professional soldier, all of these relate to military or strategy or things like that.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Well, I can tell you that even if you think that's not your genre, this is a really readable book, and
thank you.
I've enjoyed it quite a bit, and I do love being invited into meetings where I'm probably not supposed to be there, and so that's kind of the feeling I get, from this book, which is great, and we're just grateful, of course, for your service, and thank you for providing us with this crucial piece of history.
Thanks very much. I appreciate your time.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. And please come in and see the Colonel here in our community room November 9th. And I am sure you will learn something. And that's what we do here at this library. So thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.